Okay, we're going to begin to speak about Tafna and Aleph. I apologize for being behind when everybody was here, which was very geschmack, and it's wonderful having everybody here. But everybody indicated they still needed more time to finish off Tafna and Aleph, also Galas Kalim, and at the same time I ended up leaving the country for a while. So sort of, I guess the combination of the two put us all behind. When I try to finish this up, it's probably not going to be able to finish it in one shear. There's way too much material here. We'll try to see how much we can cover tonight, because a lot of it are very important. The kudas here, halacha l'maisa, and lamdas and halacha l'maisa. We'll start off in Tafna and Aleph. We're just going to skip around a little bit to different points. We're not going to obviously go through the whole thing. We're going to speak about some points here. So Tafna and Aleph, Sif Gimel, the Shulchan Aruch says, Sakinim, Magilan, B'chli Rishon, and Mutarim. So the sakin and the knives, it's enough to do hagala b'kli rishon. So the poskim all point out the Achronim ask Estira that we learned already in Kuf Chaf Aleph in Yerodea, that there the Shulchan Aruch paskin that the sakinim need, when you buy from a goy, need libun, that it's not enough to have hagala. So Mishnah Berurah over here in Sivkat and Yates has two terutzim, the stira. One is that the chametz is considered heter bala, that we already just had discussion in the past, and the Mishnah Berurah speaks at great length. He goes through the whole hakdama of that later on, the shaila and Rishonim, whether chametz is called heter bala or isur bala. And when something is heter bala, then even if you might have been used al eish, we have a kula of heter bala is considered heter b'shas blia, that it's enough to kasher ID hagala, even though it was used on the Aish. So that's one. Since over here we're talking about chametz, which there is a shita of Shulchan Aruch as a terabala. Although the Shulchan Aruch himself later on in Sif Dalet holds that chametz is isur bala, but the Ramah brings a shita as a terabala. So that's one of the tzirufim that we paskin will use as a tziruf halacha l'maisa, be samach on the Ramah. So since over here, I guess there's another swar, Rov Tashmisho, which is Sifvav of the Mechaber, and over there, the Ramah is Cholik on that, but we do have a shita like that. So the tzir of the two, we have two swars over here that there's a tzad of Heterabala and there's a tzad of Rov Tashmisho, Ide Chamin, not Ide Eish. So the combination of the two, that's why over here we're Mikol to say Hagala is enough by the knives and you don't need to do Libun. Mashen in Kuf Chaf Aleph, we're talking about Isser over there that you buy from a goy, so that's why the Shulchan Aruch is not that you have to do libun on the sakinim, because maybe sometimes you use it on the eish, and the Shulchan Aruch himself. This the gabi Isser l'chatchila to go after even that miyut tashmish of Isser. That's one point over here. And Mishnah Berurah in Sifkat and Chaf Beis, when different nakuda now, that the Shulchan Aruch said over there that you have to use a stone to get off any rust, any chaluda. So then the Mishnah Berurah talks about the concept of rust. If something has rust on it, can you do hagala on it? So the Mishnah Berurah ends off saying that he says that if the problem of having rust, brings a drasha, and it says it's very interesting that he makes a drasha out of this. It says Kol Chaluda Diksiv in Sivkat and Chaf Beis, the Parshas Hagala Klei Midyan. This is the makor for Din Hagala, is the Mechemes Midyan with the Klei Midyan. Ach Hesed Zahav, only the Zav, Kalamar Rak Zav, only the Zav, only the gold, the Hainu Shein Sham Chaluda. There's no rust, only Zahav only. Then Melas Hagala, to take out the balua. When there is rust, then there's a chashash. Maybe there's a mashu of chametz that's going to be stuck under the rust. And for a chametz be'en, hagala doesn't help. That's the chashash of rust. The Mishnah Berurah goes on to say that if it's only a stain, there's no problem of any real mamashas, then that's not an issue at all. So what today's post can speak about, and I had the same shala this year myself, and then I saw over here in the post to discuss it, that if somebody wants to be magil to do hagala on their kumkum, they have their hot water urn. They want to do hagala on that for Pesach. They don't want to buy another. You don't want to buy another urn for Pesach. Can you do it or not? Because a lot of times there's a buildup. They call it avnit, the stone that builds up on the inside of the kumkum. And sometimes people might heat up a challah on top of the kumkum, or use the kumkum for the urn for other chametz things. You might spritz on it. So you need tagala, but it has also usually a buildup in the inside of the stone from the water. So is that considered like rust? And are we cautious there might be any chametz that's stuck under that? Does it help or not? Or maybe the stone itself is a problem. Maybe the stone itself just prevents hagala. So here we have a couple svara from today's poskim that Rosh Zaman and other poskim say that there's no chash of a mashu chametz that's going to be stuck underneath that stone that's built up. So that part we're not worried about. That's number one. Number two, Rabbi Yashiv, Spartan, and others as well, that say that the stone is considered a min kli. We're allowed to do hagala on a kli which is made out of stone, or which is cut out of stone. That's a kli which is where hagala. So the stone which is stuck on the in the inside of this kli is lo gara. It's no worse than a stone kli itself. You're allowed to do hagala, and therefore the hagala does help on the stone. So it's not a problem. It's not considered like the problem of rust, but rather it's okay. And the Shuir in Sifkat and Chav Zayin, going on Sif Dalid, that we say that they're the klal kelim shmishtamshe behem idea, or like shvurim vaskalas gets behind the spit that you have with the meat on over the open fire. So then they need libun. So what does it mean idea or? What does it mean? What's the definition of on the fire as opposed to being cooking or could be considered liquid? So the Shuir says perish bli mayim. There's no water there. And he goes on to say that even if you have a layer, a lot of times if you put the spit on the fire, you don't want the meat to stick. So you put a thin layer of oil or fat or oil on there before you put the meat on there in order that it shouldn't stick. So the Mishnah says, "Ein retibus mat zeh matzilim iyos ha'eish sholet balagamri." That a little layer of oil doesn't help to prevent the eish from overtaking it completely, and it's not considered cooking, and therefore, even with a thin layer of oil, it still needs libun. Hagala is not going to be enough. And the Mishnah ends off, "Eino dome lamachbas amavur lekaman sifir aleph." Later on in Sifir Aleph, you saw that the Shulchan Aruch says that a machbas, which is a frying pan, so over there it's enough to have a gullah, because since you're frying with it and not cooking with it, then you're not using it with open fire, but you're frying with it. Fry is considered cooking, not considered open fire. And Rosh Hashanah says that that's not in a domet over there, because over there, it's not just a mashahu of shemen, but they actually would cook in shemen. It would be like deep frying, and their machbas was deep frying. So if you deep fry French fries, or you deep fry, let's say, it's Nagea Le'inin for Pesach, you deep fry the sufganiyot for Purim. So you're deep frying chametz like that, or other types of chametz, or you're doing the schnitzel, whatever they're making, it was deep fried. So all that's considered cooking. It's not considered al gabi ha'esh, and it's enough to do hagala. However, the Mishnah says that this case over here is not like that. It's just a thin layer of shemen. That's not considered deep frying. That's considered al gabi ha'esh. That's considered directly on the fire, and therefore it needs libun. So today's poskim point out, based on this, that our frying pans today, for the most part, people fry on the frying pans without deep frying. Sometimes you might deep fry, but for the most part, you fry, I don't know, if you make French toast or whatever, so you're frying actual chametz on there, and it's just a little bit of oil you put there. So that little bit of oil is tantamount to the Mishnah Berurah's little bit of oil over here on the spit in Sif Dalid. And it would not be, so that our machbas, our frying pan today would be like Sif Dalid, not like Sif Yud Aleph. It would need libun, it would not be sufficient to have a gullah. And some point out that kol sheken, when it comes to Teflon, the Teflon is not supposed to even need any oil, but sometimes we put a little bit of oil, but that little bit of oil we put is not enough to give it a din bishul, it's still considered tashnish agavia eish, and therefore it's impossible to ever to kasher a Teflon pan for Pesach, because that little bit of oil doesn't help. It's considered agavia eish. If you do libun to a Teflon pan, you will destroy it, and therefore it's not possible to do it. So that's what I was thinking, and then I saw like that in the name of Rebbe Yashiv. That's all. Of course, it's a Sfor Pshuta. So our frying pans today really cannot be kashered for Pesach. For that matter, couldn't afford it from treif to kosher either, for the most part, unless you get the kind of frying pans which are a frying pan which is like the solid iron frying pans and things like that, where the expensive solid iron ones, that those are real thick solid metal. Those you could do real libun on them theoretically and kasher them, but not the thinner ones that we have today, and especially Teflon or any plastic coating. Okay. In the same Mishnah Berurah, there's a machlokas. We're talking about here of the tashmish al gavia eish. So, when it gets to this shalom Mishnah Berurah, so there's actually a machlokas in the early poskim that, let's say you cook, the cooking that you do, let's say you cook in the frying pan, directly in the frying pan, liquid batter of chametz, or you would put, or for kuf chaf aleph purposes, you would fry in a frying pan liquid treif oil or liquid treif fat that's liquefied. So since it is a liquid right now, so maybe that should be considered bishul, because you're cooking a liquid. On the other hand, you're not cooking in a liquid, but the liquid itself is the treif, and that's directly contacting the pot or the pan, and that's on the fire. So how do we look at that? Do we look at that like the cooking with the liquid, or do we look at it that the liquid is the isser itself, and therefore it's being used on the eish directly onto the pan or the pot, and therefore it needs libun, not hagala. So this is a tremendous machlokas. The Shach and the Rukveger in Siman Kuf Chaf Aleph that we learned in the Shach and Sifkat Neches. The Rukveger over there on the spot, and it says in the name of the Ramami Pano, one of the earliest Achronim, he says that since it's directly on the kli and it's not through a different mashke, through a medium of mashke, but the mashke itself is the iser, so therefore it needs libun. But the Chassam Sofer in Yerodea Siman Kuf Yud Aleph, he holds that sof kol sof, since it is a liquefied thing, it is the bishul of a liquid, and therefore in the Makor Chaim, which is written by the Chavos Das on Hilos Pesach, so he has a number of kashas on the Ramah Pano and the Chazon Ish as well, and therefore the Chazon Ish paskins like the other poskim, not like the Ramah Pano, and we say when Halach L'Maisa, Chazon Ish paskins, and like in the Makor Chaim, that's enough to do Hagala. You don't need to have libun. So that would be an afkamina if you would use a Teflon. You take a kosher Teflon pan and accidentally just cook treif oil in it. You put a thick layer of oil and you cooked it. Since all there is liquid, so that would be considered bishul and not al gavia eish. It would be enough to do hagala, not libun. So that it would then be possible to kasher a Teflon pan that way. That's what the Chazon Ish paskins halacha l'maisa. Now, there's one last nakuda here, just a sort of a side nakuda, but it's just important shalom lamdus, that the Mishnah Berurah's lashon in Chav Zayin, the same Mishnah Berurah we're talking about in Sifkat and Chav Zayin, the Mishnah Berurah says that he has a lashon lefikach enu niflat behem gamkein al yedei hagala, something which is used on fire. You can't do plate al gabi hagala, but mayim roschim ella al yedei choma eish de kabola kach polta. This we have the klal kabola kach polta, the way it absorbs. That's the way it goes out. So whatever is used by fire has to be kasher with fire. The fact that the Mishnah Berurah uses a lashon kabola kach polto, some poskim want to infer from here that Mishnah Berurah holds that the way that libun works is also kabolo kach polto. The polto means the way it was absorbed, that's the way it's taken out, which would mean that libun, according to the Mishnah Berurah, also works by taking something out. which would then be a kula that even if something was was cooked by libun kal, like if you would cook something in an oven without any liquid, since if you would then kasher with the same level of heat in the oven, even though it didn't get to be libun gomer, let's say it was treif, you cook some treif in a pan in an oven, and the heat, whatever heat it got to, that's its libun. That's its aish, and therefore the libun would be the same kabbalah chachpoto. However, the shach and the taz and kuchaf aleph, the shach by Riechus Gdola brought down the name of the Ra'ah, the Ra'ah in Bedek Habayis, that says beferish that only Hagala works by kabbalah chachpolta. The word polta means it takes it out. It means it extracts the isser out of the kli. Masha'enken libun doesn't work by extraction. It doesn't. The way the libun works is not to extract anything out of the kli, but it burns. It says sarfa b'mkoimai. It burns it in its place. It just destroys it, and it doesn't take it out of the wall. It destroys it in the wall. Like the fire process just destroys it where it is. It doesn't take it out. And since it's not working by taking it out, so the Mishnah Berurah over here when it says kabbalah chapot is lav dafka, he's just using it. Lafuke, don't think Hagala is enough, because you need to go to the next step. It's more of a borrowed term that we use for Hagala. The Mishnah Berurah is borrowing that Lagabi Libun as well. But actually, Libun doesn't work through kabbalah chapot. It works by burning it. And since it has to burn it, consequently, until you get to the sheer chom of burning it, which will be the two shurim we said, either libun kal, which is it burns a straw, or libun gomer, which it says nitzotzos nitazim himenu, that sparks fly from it. Until you get to that level, it doesn't burn anything. So if something which is used like aviation, you don't get it to that level, it's not going to extract it. It's going to stay there and not burn it. And the nafkamina will be that if you did something like Gavia Aish, then you would have to do a higher level of libun. The level you did it, the level that it entered is not necessarily going to get it out. It's not going to burn it. And that's the tzaka bar Moshe in the tshuva. So that's a very, very important nekuda. The chumrah that we just said, that you're going to have a higher heat, a real heat of libun to get any tashon shal day eish out. That'll be a chumrah in this svara. But there's also a kula in this svara. Ramosha says a kula that the klal of kabbalah kachpolto, which we know it doesn't apply to a kli cheres, to an earthenware vessel. We know that the Torah, the Gemara says that when it says by kachim that the kli cheres yishaver, you have to break it, you have to smash it, because you can never kasher it. You can't do a gala on it. So in the Torah, ida al kli cheres she'enu yotze b'dochel olam. The Gemara says in Sachim and Avodah Zarah that the Torah was made on a kli cheres that you can never get it out of the wall forever. So Moshe says that's only the gabe hagala of a kli cheres. Mashenken libun, if you do libun on a kli cheres, then we're not trying to get it out of the walls. We're trying to burn it in its place. So that Moshe says taka would help to do libun on a kli cheres. That's a very big kula. Now the Mishnah Berurah in Sifkat and Chavches is where he writes Riechus, his Divrei Hagdama in the Machlokas. There's this very basic Machlokas in Hilchos Pesach, whether chametz is considered heterabala or isurabala. Is it heterabala because the time it was nivla during the year, it was a davar shel heter. You're allowed to eat chametz during the year. It's heterabala. The other Rishonim hold no, that it's isurabala because there's no difference between chametz on Pesach or before Pesach. It's the exact same chametz. There's no chiluk in the chefza of the chametz. It's only a chiluk in the zman, in the time. So right now it happens to be that the Torah is allowing you to eat it, but as soon as Pesach comes in, the Torah asers it. It's the same chametz, but it's just the zman is different. Masha'enken by kachim, the iser of noisar, which is chal on the kachim the day after it was nivla into the kli, and that's the problem by kachim, by the kelim of kachim, it shouldn't become nosar, which is a davar iser. So over there, when it was nivla into the kli, it was heter gomer. It's not the kachim itself is mutter forever. It's just davar heter. When it passes over a certain time, it becomes something else. It's no longer kachim, now it's nosar. So therefore, but that's why it was hetera bala by kachim. Mashenkin by chametz, it's the same chametz. It's just the zman is different. That's the machlokes Rishonim. Just the Mishnah Berurah is learning. We'll see, and throughout the entire Tafnan Aleph, as we've seen many times, that although the Shulchan Aruch basically paskins isur bala, we consider it isur. We're machmer as isur. However, there are many times that we're mitzaref the other shita of hetera bala, as we'll see as we go along. So one example of that will be that the Shulchan Aruch over here, like we just said, paskins isur bala. That's why if a kli was nivla directly with chametz, not through any medium of water, whatever, then it was, let's say you fried, and just a little bit of oil, like we just said, you fried French toast on a frying pan, then the Shulchan Aruch says that's called isur bala, because you had a direct baliyah of chametz into the pan, and that chametz is called isur. So it's not enough. It's not enough to do hagali. You need to do libun, which means there's no way to fix that pan. That's the psak of the Shulchan Aruch over here. However, in Tafnin Beis, the Shulchan Aruch passes in the beginning of Tafnin Beis that, and we spoke about this stira way back in the Shurim a couple months ago. We'll just sort of briefly touch on it again to bring out this point. That in the beginning of Tafnin Beis, the Achronim ask that there the Shulchan Aruch passes that a kli chametz, that it's a ben yomo, kli chametz that's a ben yomo that was used that same day, then you can do hagala on it erev Pesach if it's kodem shah chamishis, and that's as long as it was used in the way of not bar not, meaning if let's say you didn't fry the thing directly on the pan, but let's say you cooked matzah balls, chametz sticka matzah balls in a pot. So there it wasn't directly on the pan. It was through not bar not, through nosin tam bar nosin tam, because the first tam goes into the water, and then from the water it goes into the kli. So since it's not bar not, and it's called not bar not de hetera, because at the time that it was cooked, the chametz was a davar heter. So not bar not de hetera, two levels of nosin tam to the water, and from the water to the kli. Since it's only not bar not, you can do hagala before shachamishis, before the zman isser. So we see over there that the Shulchan Aruch is considering chametz heter, because the concept of not bar not, of two levels of not, of nosin tam, doesn't apply by Yisurim. Throughout Yoreh we see that there's no concept of not inside Hay and other places in Yoreh we see that there's no concept of not bar not by Isser, only by heter. How could that be? The Shulchan Aruch, we just said, considers chametz to be Isser, not heter. So how does suddenly in Tafnin Beis he consider it not bar not the hetera when he considers chametz Isser? So the Chazon Ish answers that since not bar not is a very shvacha tam, it's a weak tam, it's a very weak tam. So the pshat in the Shulchan Aruch over there is that not that chametz be'etzim is a davar heter, but since it needs to be chal the isser when Pesach comes in, the isser chametz, the isser shabo, can only be chal on a real tam, on something which is strong, good tam. But if it's a very weak tam, like not bar not, which is one tam which brings to another tam. One tam is going into the water. It's already weakened, the tam of the matzah balls, of the chametz matzah balls. Now there's the next level from the water to the kli. That's a second level nosin tam. That's such a weak tam that when Pesach comes in, it's not able to be chal on it, the isser of chametz. So when did the Shulchan Aruch say that chametz is isser if it was nivla directly into the pot? It's tam rishon. It's the good tam. So that we have to consider chametz isser abala, because the shame chametz was chal completely before. And it's strong enough of a tam for the isser chametz to be chal when the Pesach comes in. Mashenkin not bar not, it's not strong enough, which was similar to the svara that we saw like basar b'chalav as well. If something was nivla, and this is the Shulchan Aruch and Tzadik Hay in Yoreh paskins that if a pot was nivla through not bar not into, let's say you had not bar not of or even better, if we have basar that gets cooked in a pot, and then it's still a ben yamo, and then you clean the pot very well, and afterwards you cook fish on the same pot. So the Gemara says beferish that dagim should salaba in a pot that had basar in it. Mutter lechol b'kutach. You're allowed to eat that fish with kutach, which is kind of a yogurt they used to eat. How's that so? How's that possible? If it was in the pot of, it was in a fleshika pot. The answer is that because it was not barnat, it was 2 levels of nat. That since the basar went, the tam of the basar went into the pot. That's tam rishon, 1 tam. Then for the pot to the fish, so that's not barnat, and it's all heter right now because basar. It's kosher meat. It's basar. It's heter. So that tam heter is so weak now that it can't chal on it the iser basar b'chalav. It's not basar b'chalav yet. You need a tam basar to be cooked together with chalav. But the tam is so weak that it can't be chal that new iser basar b'chalav on that. So the same svara applies over here. That the Chazon Ish is saying that the Shulchan Aruch agrees that that when it's a very weak tam like not barnat, it can't be chal the iser chametz. So it's not a steer in the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah in Sif Daled, in this question of Isser Bala or Heter Bala, that the Mishnah Berurah explains that the Ramah brings the Yesh Mekilim that it's enough to even to do Libun Kal, which is Libun Kal is a lighter level of Libun that doesn't have to have sparks flying, but it's enough that a piece of straw would burn on it. So the Mishnah Berurah explained already that this machlokas, these 2 shitas, the Ramah himself is machriya like the Shulchan Aruch, because of the day Rishon Iker, we're Noeg like the Svara Rishona. But only Noeg in Svara Rishona. The Minig is like the first Svara, but the Ramah agrees that there is such a Svara on the books. There is a strong Svara in Halacha to say Heter Bala. So Machmir is Svara Bala, but the Mishnah Berurah explains that the second Svara of Libun Kal is because it's holding Heter Bala, and therefore a lighter level of Libun is enough to take the Isser out. And since there is such shita, there are many times that we are samach on it. The Mishnah Berurah brings down in Sifkat and Lamed Hey that if it's b'makom hefsid meruba or meniach simchas yom tov, and it's not a ben yomo, then we can rely on this shita that it's enough to do libun kal. And in the Sharat Zion, he brings down Samar Chonim, the Sharat Zion Ois Lamed Zayin brings down that there are some, the Eli Rabbah and the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Graz, they're somewhat on the shita, and they don't mention that it's an Eina Ben Yomo. They're mashma that you can be somewhat on Lagamri. Only the Prima Godim is mashma that we're only going to rely on this if it's a Eina Ben Yomo. But it's good to know that there is what to rely on, even if it is a Ben Yomo, if it's a real Shasat Chak or it happened B'diavad, then we know there's such a shita that, an important shita, the Eli Rabbah and the Shulchan Aruch Harav, that they're saying you could be somewhat on the svara of Hetera Bala, that Libun Kal is enough, even if it's a Ben Yomo, even a Ben Yomo, that B'diavad we could rely upon that. And another point over here, that the Mishnah Berurah, when he defines Libun Kal, all he mentions is the svara of that it burns a kash, it burns a straw. Now there is a machlokes achronim about this point, that there are kama achronim that hold, and it's mentioned by the Magen Avraham and other achronim, Gedolei achronim, and the Rabbi Kveger brings it down also as well, that Libun Kal is enough that you get it to above Yatsa lettuce bow, mishnei tzadim, on both sides of the metal. So that's actually a tremendous kula. It's not really that hard to get it that hot. It's less than I'm not sure what the degrees would be, but it would be less, if it's Yatsa lettuce, but you can't touch it on either side. So they say that that's already considered Libun Kal. That's less than a straw burning for sure. Where your hand's not going to burn like the straw would burn. It's just, you can't touch it. Your hand will be pulled back from it. So the Rosh Zalman in the Tshuva mentions this and says that b'makom it can't be someone on straight to do Libun Kal in that way. But if there's other tzirufim lahakel, then we can mitzaref the Das Magen Avraham to be mekel, even though the Mishnah Berurah doesn't mention it. So that's it. And that's a whole another hesber in libun kal. Now the Ramah ends off in Sif Daled that chatzuva, tzarech libun. The chatzuva is like a tripod that you have over the fire. In those days, they had the open fire, and they had a tripod, like a metal, like a round, a circular ring with 3 legs, and you put the pot on top of that. So the Ramah paskins that needs libun. So this brings us to a question of, there are a lot of things today that we cook with. Why libun? It's really a chumrah, because the pashtus, it only touched the metal, but since maybe it spilled over, we're worried about maybe it spilling over and that the fire didn't burn it up in time. But there are connoisseurs to say that the fire burnt it up right away. Therefore, it's really a chumrah that it needs libun. But the poskim over here speak about, let's say it's a kind of a cooking utensil that you cook with. Today we don't usually cook over, chatzuvas, open fires like that. But we do have, as we know, we have these, Shabbos warmers, which would be very difficult to kasher. You'd probably destroy them. So there are achronim that say that Ramosha speaks. Ramosha and a tshuva already. It's in Igros Moshe Orach Chaim Chelik Aleph Siman Kuchaf Daled. Says that if you would take a piece of metal and put it, a thick piece of metal and put it over it, then it's no longer a problem, even for Pesach. So if you take your warmer and you put a sort of like a blech kind of a thing over it, then it can be used for Pesach. And today's poskim say that huadin is if you put a thick layer, or you put a few layers of aluminum foil, that also works in kolm libun. What it needs is libun, but the point of libun, as I said, is not to get it out; it's to burn it in its place. Nothing should affect it. You have a few layers of aluminum foil; it's not going to affect it. So Rav Nosson Karmelet says that if you take a plata chashmalit, the metal plata, the warmer, that it's enough to put a thick layer of aluminum foil in a way that it's not going to tear, and then you can use that for Pesach after it's cleaned. So I think not such a well-known Kiddush, but that's halacha l'maaseh. Now, going on to Sif Hey, very yesodistic Hasidim, which speaks out the Sif, which speaks out all the klolim of Kabbalah Kach Polto. Poskim over here speak about, and that's the general rule of all the different levels of kelim. So there's a lot of discussion in the poskim about false teeth for Pesach. And they even discuss fillings as well. A filling turns the teeth, the metal becomes like a kind of a kli that's attached to your teeth. What's the halacha? Do false teeth need hagala or not? So if this is a early machlokas, already going back generations back, the machlokas, the Marsham and the Beis Yitzchak, two of the earlier poskim. According to the Marsham, we're mekel for basar b'chalav not to have to do hagala on false teeth, because since nobody eats food yatsa lettuce bo. It might happen once on a blue moon, you burn yourself, you make a mistake, but generally speaking, people don't eat food, they cool it down before they put it in their mouth. So you're not chewing it with your false teeth while it's yatsa lettuce bo, and that's not boleh or anything. It's just that the Marsham says that we should be machmer for Pesach, that even though it wasn't actually yatsa lettuce bo, but there might be some level of blia, he's machmer to pour boiling water over it. Beis Yitzchak and the Chazon Ish say that it does not need a gala even for Pesach. Lahalacha. They say that if it's possible without a big tircha to do it, and it's not going to ruin them, it's not going to destroy them, then it's kedai to do it, but it's not necessary, because if you don't eat yatsa lettuce bo, then it's not boleh chametz either, so there's no issue for Pesach as well. So me'ikar adin, it doesn't need to be done for Pesach either, just it's kedai. Obviously, you're not going to pour boiling water over your fillings. That there's no shiloh, right? So for sure have to be samach on that. And then the Steipler was mosif on this kula the Chazon Ish that you do not eat a gala. The Steipler, the Chazon Ish's brother-in-law, So he was mosif that. Then therefore you're also allowed to eat a davar charif on Pesach. You can eat like chrein on Pesach when you're not worried that you're going to be machadish the tam of chametz in your teeth, because this doesn't need a gula. Number one, when you're eating, there's no ducha sakina. One of the klalim with davar charif, with something sharp, which the klal of davar charif in Sim and Tzadik Vav and Yeridea is davar charif. Even something which is nosatan lefgam, it doesn't give a good time anymore. If you, let's say, chop a knife onto it with an onion, something sharp onto a kli which is used more than 24 hours ago, then it's machadish the tam, makes it into a good new tam. But we're not worried about that because you need not only the onion, you need dukkan sakina, you need the striking force in the cutting of the knife. And even though teeth chop as well, but they don't have the same force as a knife, and they're not going to bring out any tam. And as well, and then secondly, he wants to say that usually what you eat it's already chopped up. People don't usually take a bite out of a whole onion. So once it's already chopped up, then it's for sure not dukka sakina. But he says even to take a bite out of like a radish, the Shulchan Aruch there says that a radish is a davar charif. People do eat radish whole. Or you might take a bite out of an onion. So he says that still, since the Mikra Din, it wasn't balea anything, you never ate with it as a at the heat of Yatza lettuce bow, so it wasn't balea. We're not worried about that. But there is a chumrah in this as well that Rosh Zalman and Rabbi Yashiv said that, let's say, we know that there's a chumrah of davar gush that we might have mentioned in the past. Davar gush means that something was cooked on the fire. Let's say like a chunk of meat. It's called a davar gush. It means it's like a chunk. And so the klal is that there's the psak of the shach in Yeridea Simon Kufay Sivches. We're machmal like this for Shabbos as well. That a davar gush, even though it might be in a klish shlishi right now, you took it out. Let's say you had a hot potato, and you want to put something liquid on it, and it's in a klish shlishi now. You're taking a potato out of the soup, and it's boiling hot. And so that chunk of potato is called davar gush, and it still can cook. It can either cook or be mavliya. It's machlokas. This is the chumrah of the Marshal, and the Shach and the Taz and Yeridea quote this, and the Mishnah Berurah goes to the Hilchos Shabbos as well. So since we're machmer davar gush, and you eat with your teeth a davar gush, so Shlomo Zalman would actually say that one should not eat a davar gush of chametz within 20. If you have false teeth, you should not eat davar gush of chametz within 24 hours before Pesach. Or if you have fillings as well. If somebody has fillings in their teeth, which many of us do, then they say a tremendous chumrah that one should not eat chametz of a davar gush within 24 hours of Pesach, because then you're going to be mavliya it into your teeth, based on this chumrah of the Marshal. They agree that if you did, maybe it was kedai not to. If you did, then we're not going to be machmer to say you can't eat anything. Simchas Yom Tov is docha that, and L'maisa the Ikra Din. Ramosha writes in a tshuva that the Ikra Din davar charif is really not usher. It's only Taras Chumrah. The Shach and the Taz bring it down. Is really, we hold it Taras Chumrah since the Mechaber and the Ramah don't hold of the whole swara of davar charif. They hold that the Kli Sheni and Shlishi works davar charif. I'm sorry, by davar gush. They hold that there is no such halacha at all of davar gush. And Ramosha says that even though the Shach and the Taz pass in that way, the Klal Gadol Bahara is the halacha karama. So in Ikra Din, we for sure pass like the Ramah, there is no din davar gush. So certainly if somebody ate a davar gush, like he ate a chunk of hot, chametz matzah ball before Pesach, you were allowed to go ahead and eat on hot things in Pesach as well. We're not going to, this could I not to, but if you did, then it's for sure okay to go ahead and eat with your false teeth. And also a davar charif of chametz. So they say, Shlomo Zalman would actually say as well, to like eat some kind of davar, I'm not sure what the case would exactly be, davar charif of chametz. But again, they say if you did, then we have the same things to be samachan, with the false teeth. But What they do say, or Shlomo Zalman and Rabbi Yasha say, is that someone who has false teeth, since they probably did eat davar gush all year of chametz, therefore it's kedai to do hagala, not through taking it out and pouring boiling water over it. You don't need to do that because you never put that level of heat in your mouth. But they say that one should drink before, after 24 hours, after the last time they ate anything hot chametz stick, wait 24 hours, and then they should drink a hot cup of tea. And the hot cup of tea they drink, that will be considered hagala on whatever chametz they had. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman says the tea should be 70 degrees Celsius, and Rabbi Yosef says 71 degrees. So, they disagree to a degree. So whether it's 70 or 71, to drink a cup of tea, and that works like hagala, and there's no longer any shala on the false teeth. That's all the gabi chametz, because we're so machmir for chametz. But for basar v'chalav, the world relies upon the svora, which says that the begam hapeh, that the juices in the mouth and everything, that destroys the taste of anything, and so going from basar to chalav, nobody has a havamina to kasher your false teeth from going from meat to milk, like people eat all the time. Nobody has, or people don't have separate, with all the jokes and everything about it. People don't have to have separate false teeth for meat and milk, or for Pesach as well. Rav Vosner says an interesting thing, that even though he goes and he holds like he's machmer that one should ideally pour boiling water over their false teeth before Pesach, but he says that if they'll be ruined by that, which a lot of them that'll ruin a lot of false teeth. So there he says that we're somach on the swore that Maker Din, a davar gush is not really an isser. I think there's another swore as well that they don't mention, but for sure rov tashmisho is not that way. And we can go, since we're after 24 hours, then we go back to the swore of rov tashmisho, like that majority of your eating with your teeth is not going to be with yatsa lettuce bow. Okay, the Mishnah Berurah, moving right along here, that Mishnah Berurah in Sifkat and Lamed Vav talks about the ladle that you stir with, so that needs to have real hagala. Since it was put into the hot pot, you need real hagala. Now, what about things which get hotter than the pot of hagala, in the normal cooking pot? For example, let's say, what about a pressure cooker? A pressure cooker, by the way it works, virtue of the way it works, so there's a shalanach and poskim that in Hebrew they call it, this pressure cooker is called a sir lachatz, like a pot of pressure. That was a pressure cooker. So it goes above 100 degrees Celsius, above way above the boiling point, because of the pressure that goes within it. So some raise the question of maybe it needs to have a higher level of hagala as well. Do you need to do hagala also through pressure? So that Rosh Shlomo Zalman and Rabbi Yosef both say that the usual temperature of 100 degrees Celsius, which is the boiling point where it bubbles up to 100 degrees, then that's a klal in all of Hilchos Hagala, no matter how hot or not it is. Whatever was used to cooking, the Torah has made that level will take it out. We're not going to start checking every different pot how hot it happened to have gotten when it got cooked. When it cooked, it's at any particular time to say it needs a higher level of hagala. Nobody said such a svara. So whatever the boiling point is for hagala, to be malar resichus, which say that's one of the kolim in hagala we'll see later on, is malar resichus, that it actually boils it up. That's good enough, even if it's a regular boiling and it's not to the level of a pressure cooker. So Reb Nissim Karelet says, based on this chiddush, as brought down in Mishmoah, that let's say even if you boiled shemen, you boiled oil in a pot. Oil boils at a much higher boiling point, then it gets much hotter than water, as we know. Even so, the same level of kashering that works for anything else, the 100 degrees Celsius, when it boils up, that will work for that pot or that kli that was put in oil as well, because the klal is for all b'nei bishul, then all b'nei bishul, it's enough to do the malar sichos, the boiling up. Okay. Now, there's an interesting question in Poskim, the Pri Megadim, and the Chazon Ish speaks about as well, that if you have something that was absorbed by a Kli Rishon not on the fire, let's say you had soup cooking on the fire, you took it off the fire, and then you scooped out with a ladle, and then you find out that that soup was actually treif. There was treif chicken used in that soup or something like that. It turned out to be treif. So this ladle now was put in a Kli Rishon not on the fire. So the Chazon Ish and Pri Megadim say that since it was used not on the fire, its hagala would not have to be on the fire. Maker a din. The minig is, they say, always to do everything on the fire. It has to be that's just the minig to kasher everything on the fire. But maker a din, it wouldn't really need it. So if you kashered it, if you put it in another kosher pot of water not on the fire, then that's kosher that way. It wouldn't answer it. But however, they say even though the minig is to put it on the fire, to kasher everything on the fire, they would say that here in this case, there would not be the chumrah that you usually need, that is mal or esichlis, that it actually is, it's brought up to an actual boil. Generally, we only kasher something when it's brought to a real boil. Here, since it was used to begin with not al gabi eish, so it's enough of a chumrah to put it al gabi eish, even though it's not going to be actually boiling. It's not going to be bubbling up. Okay, in Mishnah Berurah in Sifkat Lamed Zayin, so he says there that we just mentioned, he says that the the Mishnah Berurah Lamed Zayin says that the kapas ktanim shetashmishin rak bekaros, little spoons, that you only use them like in karos, you never use them in pots. You use them for soup on the table already. He says it's enough to be machshir them b'kli sheni. And b'diavad, if you didn't do it at all, then it's not going to answer the food, because kli sheni b'diavad is not bala, so it was only used in a kli sheni. And be'etzim, the be'etzim we hold that we discussed this when we learned Siman Sheni Yud Ches in Hilchos Shabbos, that there's a steer in the Mishnah Berurah about the ladle. If you put a ladle in a pot, you're scooping out the soup into the bowls, what's the din of that ladle? Since the ladle is put into the Kli Rishon, so there was a shaila: is that ladle itself considered a Kli Rishon? Mishnah Berurah, one place was machmir and called it a Kli Rishon, and another place the Mishnah Berurah says that if you put the soup that's in the pot that was scooped out of the ladle and now it's in the bowl, is not considered kli sheni, but rather kli shlishi. So if it's a kli shlishi, that turns the ladle, it means the Mishnah Berurah is considering the ladle as a kli sheni. That was the steer that we saw in the Mishnah Berurah. We discussed it then, that Dayan Weiss in Minchas Yitzchak answers the steer to say that the Mishnah Berurah, when he said that a ladle is a kli rishon, not that he was paskening it's a kli rishon, it was an absolute psak. Rather, the Mishnah Berurah was being machmir. It's a kli rishon. It's a suffix whether it's a kli rishon or kli sheni. Mishnah Berurah is being machmir that it's a kli rishon. That's the ladle itself. So as far as putting things into the ladle, he's machmir to consider it a kli rishon. But since it's a suffix, really, once it gets to the next level down and it goes into the bowl, so then the Mishnah Berurah is samach on the tzad to say that the ladle is really a kli sheni to consider it a kli shlishi. And therefore, the nafkamina will be that when you have something in a bowl and the kapos, like the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here, that it's enough to kasher them kli sheni, but really make her din, they're not going to be asur at all if you don't kasher them at all, because really it's hard to say they're like a kli shlishi. Now, the Mishnah Berurah says that if you use them with a davar gush, this is going to be the exception to this, that if you put, let's say you use your fork and knife on the table on a steak that you put there straight from the fire, or something was cooked, pieces of potato and everything, it was a davar gush. Since we're machmer, the davar gush is considered a kli rishon, And so therefore the knives and the forks and everything are really tashmisha b'kli rishon, not b'kli sheni. And it's going to need a higher level based on the same shach and kufay in your idea Sivkat and Ches, that the shach paskins over there like the marshal that's machmer davar gush is considered a kli rishon. So according to this, if we're machmer like that, then really everything we said before about spoons and things that are used on the table really falls away completely. Because even though true, our bowls might be considered kli shlishi and everything for soup, but since you have davar gush, Svi, come here a second, quick.
Are we live?
No, it suddenly froze. My computer froze up.
Is this live?
No, it's recording, but it's froze. My computer, I can't even turn it off.
Yeah, so just let it sit for a while, I think. Yeah.
It's right in the middle. I can't budge it. Nothing happens.
Where's your mouse? It's also frozen.
Everything's frozen. Look, I can't even turn. Can't turn it off. Try to turn it up and go off.
See what it's just this.
Huh? There's nothing. Screen.
Give it a couple seconds. You almost done?
No.
Really?
There's a while to go.
Oh. I think I have to give it some time.
That would be horrible because like an hour she just got lost.
No.
How in the world?
What's this line?
Oh,
Is touchscreen?
no.
It's not. Okay, a second.
Never happened ever. It was a good computer.
Maybe it's worked it too much.
What?
Strained it too much.
Straight in computer.
I don't know. I think you just close it for a bit, leave it, let it sit for a bit.
There's no way to take a battery or anything.
No. Don't do that. It's gonna lose that for sure.
Well, it's not really corded here. It goes right into a
cloud. Straight.
Yeah. It's cording into a cloud, not to me.
Maybe you should let it sit for just a couple minutes. And see if it afterwards. Open it.
I'll take it to Shuir or something.
Right now?
We'll call it.
Intense. You're getting all into it, right? You want to make a
No, I had.
What?
I had. Hi, Eric Rabbi Fried. How are you doing? Good. Sorry to bother you so late at night. I just have a little of an emergency here. I'm in the middle of recording on Zoom a class for like rabbis for like all around the world, and I'm about an hour into the class on Zoom, and suddenly I'm on an Asus ZenBook at home, and suddenly the whole thing just froze up. My computer totally froze. I can't do anything with it. I can't even turn it off. And I don't want to lose what I did. Also, do you have any idea what I might be able to do? Nothing happens. Yep. Oh, I didn't do that. I can try that.